Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, all the places at Hawk Blogger. And today's an interesting one. Today is an interesting one. It is not all that common that arguably one of the best players in the sport could be available for the Seahawks to make a move for. And we will talk about this at length. The Micah Parsons news broke this morning from courtesy of Diana Rossini. I will tell you about it in a second. If you haven't already, click like, click subscribe, all the stuff, please do. As you can tell, my ability to predict exactly when I'm going to go live during preseason is a little harder. So you want to make sure you're subscribed. We're up over 22,000 subscribers, on our way to 23, 24, 25. Would love to have you as part of the crew. So let's get right into it. Diana Rossini reported at 7:44 a.m. this morning that the Micah Parsons Cowboys relationship has deteriorated to the point where the star pass rusher is considering drastic measures, which could include a trade request or even a declaration that he is severing his relationship with the team, per multiple league sources familiar with the situation. The two sides remain far apart heading into the second week of training camp and are not currently negotiating. All right, so we know this. We know Micah Parsons and the Cowboys have been unable to come to an agreement on an extension. We know that Jerry Jones has been, for whatever reason, kind of antagonizing Micah Parsons during this process. And we know Micah Parsons is incredibly good. I'll talk about some of the reasons he's so good in a second. I think the conversation here becomes, what would it cost? And should the Seahawks go after him? And what would this mean for the Seahawks if they actually did it? All right, so I'm looking here. There's actually some new news coming out. Let me read this to you guys. This is Micah Parsons posting. Is this on X? Let me double check. Sorry. Let's make sure I've got all the latest if we're going to do this. Micah Parsons. Where is that from? All right, well, let me see let me see if I can pull this up. Oh, wait, that's, I think, a fake account. Let me double check. Sorry, guys. I appreciate the patience. I just want to make sure I don't mislead you. Oh, no, this looks like the right account. All right, so 17 minutes ago, Micah Parsons posted this on X with the caption, "Thank you, Dallas." Here is what he wrote. I have not read this yet. "Yes, I wanted to be here. I did everything I could to show that I wanted to be a Cowboy and wear the star on my helmet. I wanted to play in front of the best fans in sports and make this America's team once again. The team my pops and I grew up cheering for way up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, I no longer want to be here. I no longer want to be held to closed-door negotiations without my agent present. I no longer want shots taken at me for getting injured while laying it on the line for the organization, our fans, and our team and my teammates. I no longer want narratives created and spread to the media about me. I had purposely stayed quiet in hopes of getting something done, but since there is confusion out there, let me clear things up. I had my agent reach out to the Cowboys last season after my third year in hopes of getting a deal done early. Unfortunately, the team did not want to start any negotiations at that point. I was okay with that, didn't complain, and focused on the 2024 season. After the season, I told my agent once again to let the team know we were open to negotiate when they met at the combine. My agent informed me I should wait for other deals to get done because the price would only go up, but I didn't care and I wanted to secure myself as a long-term Cowboy. This was before any of the other pass rusher deals got. He kind of did a weird thing here. Okay. This was before any other pass rusher deals got done this offseason. I knew I would be leaving money on the table, but again, I was okay with that. Again, radio silence as far as my extension. In March, I met with Mr. Jones, Jerry Jones, to talk about leadership. Somehow the conversation turned into him talking contract with me. Yes, I engaged in a back and forth in regards to what I wanted from my contract, but at no point did I believe that was supposed to be a formal negotiation. And I informed Mr. Jones afterward my agent would reach out thinking this would get things done. But when my agent reached out and spoke to Adam, he was told the deal was pretty much already done. My agent, of course, told him that wasn't the case and also reached out to Stephen Jones. Again, the team decided to go silent. At that point, we decided we would allow the team to reach out to us whenever they decided they wanted to talk, yet still not a call or email or text to my agent about starting a negotiation. Up to today, the team has not had a single conversation with my agent about a contract. Not one demand has been made by my agent about money, years, or anything else. Still, I stayed quiet, but again, after repeated shots at myself and all the narratives, I have made a tough decision. I no longer want to play for the Dallas Cowboys. My trade request has been submitted to Stephen Jones personally. Bombshell. So let's get back to the point of this show, because I think this only makes it more likely that he is going to be truly on the market. The other thing that did just come out right around the same time is, this is all coming out really quickly, so we'll react as it's coming. Diana Rossini now reports the Dallas Cowboys have no intention of trading Micah Parsons. Still, teams around the league are planning to reach out to check about availability today. Okay. Stage is set, folks. Stage is set. Now, things you should know about Micah Parsons as well. Micah Parsons loves adding dirty. Micah Parsons had glowing reviews about Seahawks defensive coordinator Adam Dirty, who was his defensive line coach when he was in Dallas. When Adam Dirty got hired last year in Seattle, he spoke at length about how good of a coach he's going to be and how he'd love to play for him again in the future. Micah Parsons also, as recently as a month or two ago, said if he was going to get traded, Seattle is the place he'd want to go and where he would predict that he would go. We also have seen Adam Dirty recruit Jonathan Hankins to Seattle, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys line. DeMarcus Lawrence to Seattle, formerly of the Cowboys defensive line. Is Micah Parsons the next Dallas Cowboy to become a Seahawk? Now, I know that I was right there front row when DeMarcus Lawrence took a shot at the Cowboys and then he and Micah Parsons got into it. No, I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not he becomes a Seattle Seahawk. That was just former teammates having a little bit of fun at each other. I don't think there's any real bad blood. Now, let's play the game for a second where we assume that Micah Parsons is going to be moved. All right. And what do I think it would take to move Micah Parsons to Seattle? Well, he is in the last year of his deal. And so he's going to need an extension. You're going to be paying him north of $40 million a year. Now, you might wonder where I'm pulling that number from. Well, if you look at the top paid edge rushers in the NFL, TJ Watt just set the market at $41 million per year. TJ Watt is 31. Micah Parsons is 26. Micah Parsons very realistically could get closer to 43, 44, 45. Like, that's not crazy for a 26-year-old edge rusher who's among the best. Let me backtrack for a second and just state the case about who Micah Parsons is as a player before we even get into what it would cost to get him. All right. So let me put this up here for you guys to see. I'll share my screen. This is from our good friends over at Field Vision Pro, and this is just from last season, looking at the best edge rushers in football. And as you can see, Micah Parsons ranked second in the NFL last year in pressure rate at 17.7%, and he ranked fourth in sack rate at 3.5%, even though he missed some time. Micah Parsons, over his 4-year career, has 52.5 sacks. Micah Parsons has never had fewer than 12 sacks in a season. Never had fewer than 12 sacks in a season. Last year, even though he only played 13 games, he had 12 sacks. All right. Before last season, he had only missed one game in his career. So he had played every game except last season when he missed 4. Okay. He has been a first team AP All-Pro in his rookie year, in his second year. He was an AP All-Pro second team his third year. And he was a Pro Bowler last year, again, even though he didn't finish the season. When you look at the top graded edge rushers last year for the NFL, Micah Parsons was the 6th highest graded edge rusher behind Aiden Hutchinson, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, and Khalil Mack. From a pass rush perspective, he was the 4th highest graded pass rusher from PFF with a 91.6 grade. And if you look at his 4 seasons, his lowest grade was as a rookie when he had an 89.8 grade. Every season since, he has been over 90. 90 again is All-Pro elite. Very few players make it over that number. He has been over 91 as a pass rushing grade every single year. He has had at least 67 pressures every season. In 2023, he had 103 pressures, which is insane. So I could keep going. I might keep going, but the resume is unquestioned about Micah Parsons is one of the top 2 to 3 edge rushers in football. Now, getting back to cost. This is a guy who is going to cost somebody a lot of money. And if you're going to, the opening bid, I think, would be 2 first-round picks. That would be the opening bid for Micah Parsons. I don't think that's the direction the Seahawks would go. And here's why. I think there's a few different ways that a player could be included in a deal for Micah Parsons that would make some sense for both sides. And I'll start with the one that I think makes the most sense from a Seattle perspective. I think you're going to have to give up a first-round pick no matter what. That's happening. I think if you included a third-round pick and you included an edge rusher, a young edge rusher going back the other direction, Boye Mafe would be the name that I would bring up. I think a first, a third, and Boye Mafe is going to be a very competitive offer for Micah Parsons. If it goes up to a first and a second and Boye Mafe, I still think that that is a reasonable offer for Micah Parsons. And you might say, my God, like, can we afford 40, 45, whatever it's going to be, million a year for Micah Parsons? Yes, the Seahawks have cap room to make a move like this. Do they have the cash? That's a separate question. Don't know. But consider this. Boye Mafe is also in the last year of his deal. Boye Mafe is going to command an extension easily north of $20 million a year, most likely. And depending on how he plays this year, it could be higher than that. So you're not really adding $40 million to your cap or to your salary system. It's not just the cap; it's also the cash that you have to spend. But with Boye Mafe, you're basically, it's the difference. What are you going to have to pay Boye Mafe versus what you're going to have to pay Micah Parsons? It's going to be more, no question. But it's not a straight 40, let's call it just 40 for now, $40 million a year more, because you already were going to have to be paying Boye Mafe almost certainly at least $20 million a year. Okay. Now, the other thing you may not know, Micah Parsons is almost a year younger than Boye Mafe. I checked. I double checked. I triple checked. It's true. Boye Mafe is 26 years and 244 days old. He was born on November 30th, 1998. So he turned 26 in November. Micah Parsons was born May 26, 1999. He has just turned 26 in May. So he's almost a year younger. Well, I mean, not quite, but he is like 2/3 of a year younger than Boye Mafe. So you would be getting younger at the position, and no offense to Boye Mafe, you'd be getting better at the position. And I don't think that you can, like, there's no logical reason why you wouldn't make a move like that, just from a talent perspective. There are some question marks, and we'll talk about those in a second, about why you might not want to do this. But from a talent, money, football perspective, there are no questions. That is a hand it in, let's do it, pay him the money, put him at the edge, opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence and Derek Hall, and eventually Uchenna Nwosu. And imagine Micah Parsons next to Byron Murphy for the next 5 years. Imagine him next to Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed. The interior of that Dallas line is not that good. And Micah Parsons is good enough that he's able to be a game wrecker even without a great defensive tackle, group inside with him. And in fact, I'm like going to look right now who their defensive interior, I mean, Mozzie Smith, like, it's Linval Joseph last year, Carlos Watkins. It's not a good group. You put Micah Parsons next to Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed, and with DeMarcus Lawrence and Derek Hall, I don't think it's hyperbole at all that the Seahawks immediately become the best defense in the NFL, unquestioned. With Mike McDonald as the coach, they have almost no holes at any spot. And now you have really the one thing that you are missing in this defense, which is an alpha edge rusher. You've got two guys in Boye Mafe and Derek Hall that you hope can become something like that, but it's still a projection and it's still counting on development. But now, I mean, I think you get someone like Micah Parsons, all of a sudden Derek Hall is going to be that much better. So it's not just that Micah Parsons is good. He's going to lift the other players. He's going to make Byron Murphy better, because good luck doubling Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams and then Micah Parsons. Like, Derek Hall is going to have 0 people blocking him. Like that's how much attention he would require. So from a football reasoning, there's no question this makes sense. From a salary perspective, no question. From a compensation trade-wise, I think it also makes sense. Now, if it ends up being 2 first-round picks and Boye Mafe, that starts to be a little bit uncomfortable because you're also paying the guy. Now, this is a pretty key consideration, folks. When's the last time that John Schneider, the newly minted with an extension GM who's got all sorts of security to make whatever big move he feels is appropriate, but when's the last time that John Schneider made a big trade and extended the player? He doesn't do that anymore. Ever since the Percy Harvin deal, where it sent the wrong message to the locker room, it set a lot of negative things in motion, John Schneider has essentially gone with we will trade for you, but we want to make sure you fit with us before we give you an extension. If you're talking about giving up Boye Mafe, a first round pick and a second or a third or 2 firsts or whatever it ends up being, I mean, you cannot let that guy walk at the end of the season. Like, you can't. So this would be a very challenging situation to say you're not going to extend this guy as soon as you get him, but John Schneider doesn't do that. So keep in mind, that is a factor in evaluating this. And yeah, the other factor to keep in mind is John Schneider, Mike McDonald, they're enjoying what they've talked about as a drama-free 2025 so far. This team is coalescing, it's cohering, it's coming together. The leadership is positive. The people are of high quality. They're working together. They're lifting each other up. Offense, defense, defense to defense. All of it's good stuff. You add a Cooper Kupp, you add a Sam Darnold, Leonard Williams stepping forward and coaching up Gray Zabel, not only Byron Murphy. Like, a lot of really good things are happening. And Boye Mafe not only is a very good player, but he's a great guy. And so everything is positive culturally right now. Micah Parsons has a big personality. He has a lot of stuff going on outside of football with his podcast and all these other things he does. Are you sure that that's going to be a personality profile that's going to work? And are you willing, as a second-year head coach who's just starting to get his handle on things, add a personality like that into the locker room? That's a question. For me, the answer is yeah. Like, the answer is yes. I think that he is so much more productive and talented than anyone else you're going to talk about getting at the edge spot. And I think it is such a hand in glove fit with what this defense needs to be dominant. That, I mean, I genuinely believe adding him to this defense could make this defense potentially historically good. Like, that front line is going to be a nightmare for anybody. And you've got good second level defenders, and you've got good corners, and you're adding Nicky Minwari as a big nickel, and you've got great safeties. There's a lot to like about what that would look like. And it could be so powerful and so good that your floor becomes 11 or 12 wins, regardless of what the offense is capable of. Think about the 2023 Cleveland Browns, which I don't think was this good of a defense, but with Myles Garrett and that defense, which is the number one defense in the NFL, they won 12 games with like Joe Flacco at quarterback, went to the playoffs, lost in the playoffs. But my point is, a defense that good can absolutely just raise your floor to a point where the offense just has to be like, get out of its own way. PJ Walker was winning games. PJ Walker beat the 49ers that year with the Browns in a year that 49ers team went to the Super Bowl. So like that's how much a defense, and I don't think this defense would be, I think this defense would be significantly better than that 2023 Browns defense. So from that perspective, this all makes a ton of sense. Micah Parsons would want to come here and work with Adam Dirty. The Seahawks have that need. They've got a player that is young and available, plays the same position that you could move back the other way, and you're going to have to pay. Like all of those things match up. So the question really becomes, is Dallas going to bend? Is Micah Parsons going to bend? Because if Micah Parsons really is going to just walk away, then you really have to wonder, will the Cowboys eventually just agree to take on some good additional, some good compensation, or will they just eat it and hope that he bends eventually? You heard in the thing I read about Micah Parsons that he loves the Cowboys. He always wanted to be the Cowboys. And he's tried a million times to have this contract work. If the Cowboys come back today or tomorrow and are like, here's the deal, we're sorry, let's do this, and they mend fences, is Micah Parsons really going to be like, no, you've gone too far, I don't want to play here anymore? My best bet is that the Cowboys will extend an olive branch. Micah Parsons will, make them sweat, sign it, and he'll stay there. That's my best bet. But I think that that's not 100%. The probability is not 100% that that's what's going to happen. I talked about one package, which was Boye Mafe and, 2 draft picks to get Micah Parsons. There are other options. Now, I see some people talking about Uchenna Nwosu. Like, Uchenna Nwosu's hurt. You're not going to trade him. They're not going to accept him. Like, that is not an appealing trade chip for right now. Boye Mafe is significantly more interesting to a team like the Cowboys, who would be adding him in. But there is another player that comes to mind for me that would make some sense for a couple of reasons. But I don't like it as much, and I'll tell you why. The other move that would make some sense is the same like draft pick combination, and you trade Reek Woolen, who is going into his final year of his deal and is due to make potentially like $30 million a year. Like, that's not out of the question. Depending on how he plays this year, he plays a premium position, and he statistically is one of the best corners in football. And if you are the Cowboys, maybe you value that more for whatever reason. I think they are better set up at corner than they are, with Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs and some of the guys they've got there. But who knows? That's another one that could be. And we've heard from Brady Henderson of ESPN that he thinks it's super unlikely the Seahawks are going to extend Reek Woolen. I don't love that. I've been very consistent. I think it's going to be really hard to find another player of Reek Woolen's quality at corner. And I don't see that person on the roster. But if it's true that the Seahawks do not intend to extend Reek Woolen after this year, they're going to let him walk, then they'd have to be willing to at least consider trading him for Micah Parsons. Now, the thing that would be weird there is now you'd end up with Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, DeMarcus Lawrence, Uchenna Nwosu, and Micah Parsons. Like, you don't need all those edges. So you'd probably then have a follow-on deal where maybe you do trade Boye Mafe somewhere else to either recoup some draft capital or get a cornerback that you like. I haven't looked to see what that would look like, but I think you'd have to have some follow-on deal, because you'd essentially just be putting Shaquille Griffin or Josh Jobe at both of them would become your starting corners. And after that, I think the depth there is a little thin. It certainly is a big drop off from Reek Woolen. And I think if you do that, I think you're talking about not nearly the same quality of defense as it would be if you had Micah Parsons and Reek Woolen versus one or the other. And that's why the Mafe move makes a lot more sense. Derek Hall has 2 years, like this year, and one more year left on his rookie contract. That's why I don't think you're trading him. I told you I don't think Uchenna Nwosu would be the guy traded. So Reek Woolen's the other guy for me that makes some sense to being included in a deal like that. But I think that one is just less likely because I don't think it makes as much sense for the Seahawks in terms of the makeup of their defense and where they've got depth and where they don't. And I also don't think it makes as much sense for the Cowboys, who would likely want a pass rusher to replace the edge rusher to replace their edge rusher. So I see there are a bunch of super chats. Let me check those out. And I think there's some other things I want to bring up, but let's get to these. Dustin Bayham, thanks for the super chat, says, my concern is that if neither Darnold or Milroe pan out for us, needing a franchise quarterback with no first round picks and no cap is a bad place to be. Yeah, like this is the rub. If you trade, like next year is going to be a good quarterback draft. There should be some available in the first round. I will say this, unless the Seahawks really fall off this year and are a terrible team, you're probably not going to get one of those quarterbacks anyway. Like you're going to have to be in the top 10 to get there, and you're not going to have the capital to move up from the 20s to whatever that would be, or even the late teens. It's going to be very competitive. Everyone else is going to want there. Like, so I get it, but you just don't get an opportunity to add a blue chip player very often. And think about how it's felt to add Leonard Williams, which cost a second and a fifth round pick, and then a $21 million a year contract extension. Think about where the Seahawks team would be if they hadn't made that move. And he's the best player. He was the best player on the team last year. Micah Parsons is younger, significantly younger, and honestly has had a significantly better career. And that's no shade against Leonard Williams. Micah Parsons just is that good. So I get it. It's a totally valid point, Dustin. But if you look at the Seahawks history, first round picks have not been their quarterbacks. You know, Dan McGuire, Rick Meyer, the guys that they spent first round picks on at quarterback have never been the guys. Matt Hasselbeck was not a first round pick. He was a trade. Obviously, Russell Wilson was a third round pick. Geno Smith was not, even when he was drafted, he was a second round pick, but he was a free agent. They have found other ways to fill that position. So as much as obviously everybody wants there to be this franchise guy, that hasn't been the Seahawks' path so far through 50 years of their history. I'm pretty bullish on Jalen Milroe eventually being able to be that guy. I don't think this year's the year, but I think signs are pretty positive in that direction, to be honest. Next super chat comes from Anton Glusanikov. Hopefully I'm close there. He's been a member of the channel for a couple months, which is awesome. Says, what do you think? How early could a trade happen? Nothing's going to happen quickly. When all this dust has been kicked up, things will settle for a while. They'll go all the way through preseason. They will test each other's mettle. There will probably be fines levied and time missed. And the Cowboys will see if Micah Parsons really is willing to miss time. And we'll just have to watch that. But if I was to predict, like, when could it really happen? I mean, it could happen as early as like next week, but I think that's probably unlikely. Best guess, if it's going to happen, would be right before the season starts. Next, Jackson says 1 sack in four playoff games. He can sometimes no-show. The reality is everybody can sometimes no-show. Like that's just the nature of being a pass rusher. And I think it's a little bit different when you're talking about a defense as stacked as the Seahawks defense would be, he wouldn't have to necessarily have the numbers. He would just have to demand that much attention and free up Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy and Derek Hall and DeMarcus Lawrence and a blitzing Nicky Manwari and a blitzing Devin Witherspoon and a blitzing Ernest Jones. They'd be a nightmare. They'd be a nightmare for offenses. They would not have a pass protection plan that could stand up to that talent from that many different places with Mike McDonald calling the plays. Come on. Like, let's not kid ourselves. That would be absolutely the most entertaining defense the Seahawks have had since the LOB. It would rival that defense for how good it could potentially be. I know that's hyperbole, or that sounds like hyperbole, but that would be an absolutely insane front seven. And if we went back and we looked at the LOB and this, you might be able to make a case that total talent wise, that would be a more talented group. Now, the LOB's secondary, no question, that was like maybe the most talented secondary in the history of the game. But the front seven, even with Bobby and KJ, like, I love Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill. Great guys, great players. Not all pros. Not all pros. And you've got Leonard Williams and Micah Parsons, who are essentially all pros, defensive player of the year, both of them level players. You did not have the disruption in the middle the way this group would have. You did not have the level of edge rush that you would have with this. And you definitely did not have the blitzing ability that these corners and Nicky Manwari at safety would be bringing. All right. Jacoby says, Brian's hot take on the most likely trade scenario to acquire Parsons. Any chance we get Micah without giving up Mafe, Hall, or Uchenna? Yeah, I mean, I think that involves just more draft capital. That's why I said the starting bid is probably 2 first-round picks. I think if you're the Seahawks, you're trying to include a player so you don't have to give up 2 first-round picks. But you might have to. And I think the question for all of you to answer, in fact, I'll put this in a poll question. Let me, guys. Would you give up 2 first-round picks for? You give up 2 firsts for Micah Parsons? I would be pretty hesitant about that. So I just started that poll. You guys can answer that. We'll check back on that in a little bit. But, you know, more than that, draft pick wise, I don't know. And I think I told you the other player that is not Mafe, Hall, or Uchenna, and that's Reek Woolen. Would make some sense. I don't think they will do that. Next, Richie Brash, who's been a member for over a year, says, I'd rather wait and see if he becomes a free agent and try to sign him without having to give up a ton of trade capital for him. Sounds like he'd like to come here anyway. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that the idea that he would hit free agency seems like almost the least likely scenario. That you'd expect the Cowboys to potentially franchise tag him and not let him go. So I don't think the Cowboys are just going to let this guy walk with a 3rd-round comp pick as their return. Like, I just don't see that. So I don't think you can get him as a free agent. I think you're going to have to trade for him if you want him. And I think you're going to have to make an aggressive enough offer that the Cowboys are like, well, maybe this is the best way to go. Big Mike says, Mike Mack originally targeted the end of this week to finalize right guard and center, but now has said it won't happen for 2 more weeks. Does that concern you? It concerns me. It does not concern me. And when I asked Mike McDonald about this, was it yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. Anyway, he said that things are settling in. They've got an idea. And I said on my show yesterday, if you watched it, Anthony Bradford has, I think, stepped into the starting right guard spot. I think he's now the odds-on favorite, is my guess. Now, that could change, but I think that's the big shoe to drop. And then Olu has been the leader in the clubhouse at center, and I think that's your 5. I think it's Charles Cross, Gray Zabel, Olu, Anthony Bradford, and Abe Lucas. And you should check out my Anthony Bradford interview. I've been super hard on the guy and honest about his lack of production and his penalties and his pass protection issues and all that stuff. He's in better shape. He is playing well. I think he's got the best traits to put in that position. And I think the combination of Anthony Bradford and Abe Lucas in the run game are going to be a lot for teams to deal with. And then you have Gray Zabel and Charles Cross on the other side, who are already looking like a lot to deal with in the run game. I think this becomes a pretty interesting crew. So that's kind of what I'm rooting for at this point. I won't hate it if Jalen Sundell comes out of nowhere and wins it. I will be skeptical if Christian Haynes does to this point, based on what I've seen. All right. Detail Oriented is gifted 10 Hawk Blogger memberships. Man, Bobby, always appreciate you, man. And if you want one of these, or Space has also gifted 5. So 15 free Hawk Blogger memberships. All you got to do is turn on your gifting for your YouTube account. If you don't know how to do that, search for it on Google. There'll be an explanation. And then like, subscribe, comment, watch the show. The more that you watch, the more that you have a chance to get one of these free memberships. So YouTube is the one that decides who gets them. I don't, those guys don't, but I really appreciate the generosity from those guys. And consider upgrading to club level or higher, where you get access to my player interviews and everything immediately instead of having to wait. You also get access to the Discord channel when you're a club level or higher member. Okay, let's check out the poll and see what people have said. Interesting. It started out very strong that people would give up 2 first-round picks. After almost 300 votes, it's 51 to 49 yes to no. So 51% said they would give up 2 first-round picks. I think that's the reason I asked that, is because I think it's just a tough one. Let me start another poll. Would you give up a first? Let's make it a second and Boye Mafe for Micah Parsons. And let's see what people say for that one. While we do that, I want to check out, I think that there's a video I wanted to play for you guys. Josina Anderson has posted an immediate reaction to the Micah Parsons trade request from a league source. He's a cowboy. Another high-level source reacting to trade requests from Trey Hendrickson, Terry McLaurin, and now Micah Parsons told me, in his opinion, these trade requests are dumb. They don't mean anything. It is evident the second source does not believe any players from the aforementioned trio are going anywhere. Maybe. Let me play for you guys Micah Parsons talking about Aden Dirty and the Seahawks defense. And this was last year. So let me see if I'm sharing the right thing. Hold on. Let me share and make sure audio's on. And let me play this for you guys. I'm going to play just the sound because I don't know if the video is copyrighted, but the sound you should be able to hear. So here we go. Let me add it to the stage. And here's Micah Parsons talking about Aden Dirty.
You know, you got Leonard Williams.
Thinks he's like a
prophet
or something, dog.
No, I think about, because you guys forget our defensive line coach is now their new DC.
Oh.
So AD, I'm very familiar with her. I know his play style. Yes, the head coach is calling the defense, but AD, what they like dogs up front. Byron Murphy's a dog. He plays that you know, that 3-down Texas defense. He's able to take on double teams. And what would they ask him a lot? You know, you think about Baltimore, you think about Seattle, Dallas. We had great defensive lines. They want dogs up front, guys who create pressure, openings for other guys. And Byron Murphy's a great guy. They just extended Leonard Williams. They paid their other outside linebacker rusher last year. So, you know, they're just completing the front. You know, I think they got a great trio of DBs, and man, you just add into the front. I think they're trying to create a simulated, Baltimore defense. And you add also in the thought, like, they're playing against the 49ers. They're playing against the Rams, guys who like to run the ball. So why not go get your run stopper and a guy who could convert on play action?
So that was Micah Parsons talking about adding dirty, as well as a lot about Byron Murphy as well. So yeah. And I see people talking about Trey Hendrickson. Right. Well, Trey Hendrickson would cost you less probably in return. I think you could probably get I think even maybe a second round pick and Boye Mafe would be enough potentially for Trey Hendrickson. And you'd pay him less because he's older. Trey Hendrickson's 30 years old. Micah Parsons is just turned 26. So I'm reading chat. Not sure if I'm missing something. I see Amy is responding to somebody. So if there's something I should take a look at, let me know. So here is a super chat from Adam the Islandson. Says, I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah get along. I talked about this a little earlier. I mean, as someone who is kind of in the middle of that whole thing, yes, DeMarcus Lawrence took a shot at the Cowboys. Micah Parsons stood up for the Cowboys. DeMarcus Lawrence shot back, and that was it. I really just, I don't see that being something that is going to hold up this type of thing. And I would expect Aden Dirty, DeMarcus Lawrence, John Schneider, Mike McDonald, if there's a chance this could happen, they'd talk about it. They would know. So, I don't think this is going to be the reason that the deal doesn't go through. I think the reason the deal wouldn't go through is because Dallas won't do it, or because Micah Parsons agrees to an extension. Like those are the ways I think this deal, the reason this deal would not get done. So with that in mind, I mean, I think there's certainly going to be other teams that can make a better offer. I'm sure there are. There could always be a team that makes, offers more to do it. Maybe the Washington Commanders would be a team that would be interesting to do this with, because Dan Quinn knows Micah Parsons. Dan Quinn coached Micah Parsons, and they need help on defense, and they've got their franchise quarterback. So maybe they're willing to give up 2 first-round picks or more in order to get Micah Parsons. They'd probably be a really smart place to do it. They've got their own issue with Terry McLaurin. And by the way, no, I don't think it would make more sense to go after Terry McLaurin because he's 30 years old. And as much as I think Scary Terry is worth every penny he's asking for, I'd be nervous if I was the Commanders to give a 30-year-old receiver a 4-year deal of $30 million plus per year. Like, that is uncomfortable. They're in a tough spot because they very clearly need him, but it's risky to give a receiver that age that kind of money. Like Stephon Diggs fell off quite a bit, and a lot of these other guys fell off quite a bit after 30. So I don't think the Seahawks should be making that move. I also don't think Terry McLaurin, as much as I love the guy as a player, I don't think he's exactly what you need opposite of Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I think you'd have 3 players in Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, and JSN that are all, not similar, but like none of them are X receivers. None of them are going to play the X for you. And that's what you need. Like, that's what you would ideally be adding. So I don't think you make a trade, give up the draft capital, then sign the guy to a 30 million plus deal at age 30 and have him not be exactly what you need. Like, I don't think that really moves the needle enough to take that kind of risk. I do think the Micah Parsons thing does. I mean, it's kind of a hand in glove. The only thing that doesn't make sense with it is the concern about his personality. Is he going to be a guy that you can count on in the locker room and a guy that's going to be a good leader and a good example? for the program that Mike Macdonald's building. That's the only thing for me that's really the question mark. I see we've got another gift. Ransom Cornwall has given 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. So we now have 20 free Hawk Blogger memberships given out. Love to see it. Appreciate that from all of you. So yeah, I'm not one to fall for the rumor of the day or the hot story of the day kind of thing. And I'm not going to try to make this into something that will definitely happen, because most likely it won't. But this one has legs to me. This one, I don't think you can be the GM of a good football team and have a guy the talent level of Micah Parsons at the age that he is, at the position that he plays, and not make a phone call about it and not have a conversation in-house about whether you should do it. And because it's such a just force multiplier for this team, I think you got to be real serious about this one. I mean, I think it would be just a absolute turbo boost to this team's potential, and I think it would open up a championship window for them. I think that's how big of a move it could be if they were to make it. All right, let me check in the poll that I did. The follow-up poll was, would you give up a first, a second, and Boye Mafe for Micah Parsons? 74% say yes, with over almost 400 votes in. So it's interesting. The only difference there is, instead of two firsts was almost a 50-50 split. But you go to a first and a second and Mafe, and 3 out of 4 Seahawks fans, at least in here, say yes. So I think that's pretty interesting. Appreciate everyone who's been participating in the poll. I see someone saying that the poll's inaccurate. The trade package is way too short. I don't think so. I think there's not a lot of examples. You're not going to go to 3 first-round picks. You're not going to go to 2 firsts and a young, talented edge rusher. I don't think that's where things start. I think it would be a first, a third, and Mafe is where you'd start. And that's quite a bit. If it gets to a first and a second, I still think that's a doable deal. If you go up to 2 firsts, I mean, think about the Jamal Adams trade was 2 firsts, a third. There's some players swapped as well. And that was a terrible deal. And I think not only was that such a gross overpay, if you had made that offer for a player like Micah Parsons, like this version, this age, this time, I think that would be an accepted offer. So even then, it was 2 firsts plus a little bit more. And you were talking like Bradley McDougald is not Boye Mafe, and he didn't play the premium position, and he wasn't that age, and he hadn't had that production. So I just do think the Seahawks are in a very unique spot of having a lot of what you'd need to make a deal like this. I am not somebody who generally is a proponent of trading away draft capital in order to build your team. But I think in this case, it makes some sense. I think in this case, it would make some sense. All right, folks. I think we're going to call it there. It's looking like I will probably not be at the Seahawks practice today. I will be at the scrimmage tomorrow night at Lumen Field. Hopefully I'll see some of you there. The Fan Fest, I think, is what it's called. So I'll do a show probably after the Fan Fest, and maybe I think Jeff Simmons and I will do a Seahawks Saturday tomorrow. I have some plans in the morning, so it just kind of depends on his schedule and mine meeting up. So if you haven't already, click like and subscribe. Please do. Click the bell to get notified when we go live. Go to patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up, get access to ad-free versions of the audio of this show, as well as the Discord channel, and get verified over at hbtix.com. HBTix is the best place, only place to sell your Seahawks tickets to Seahawks fans. Let's make sure that when the 49ers come to play in Lumen Field, that as many Seahawks fans are in seats as possible. HBTix is the place to go to do it. All right, folks, have a great rest of your Friday. If anything else comes up, I'll do another show. But until then, I'm Brian Emhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.